Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the window of his office, looking out at the stars. Earth's moon hung bright in the black sky. He had been staring at the same view for 3 hours now, ever since the message came in. The door behind him opened. With a soft hiss, Captain Lisa Bennett walked in, her face pale and tired. She carried a data tablet in her hands, and Jake could see her fingers shaking slightly. "Sir?" she said quietly. "The final report is ready." Jake turned around slowly. He had been dreading this moment for weeks. "Tell me." Lisa took a deep breath. "New Eden is gone, sir." "All of it." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. New Eden was humanity's crown jewel among the outer colonies. 2.3 million people called it home. Families, children, scientists, farmers who grew food for a dozen other worlds. How? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer would be terrible. "The Kethver Dominion," Lisa said. "Our long-range scouts finally got close enough to see what happened. The cities are. They're glass now, sir. Melted glass. The orbital stations are debris. The defense platforms are gone." Jake sat down heavily in his chair. The Kethvar were a name whispered in fear across the galaxy. They were older than humanity, stronger, and they had one simple rule: young species must die. They had wiped out 17 different races in the past 1,000 years. Survivors? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Lisa shook her head. "None that we can detect. The planet's surface has been burned clean. Even the oceans are boiling." Jake closed his eyes. He thought about Commander Pete Rodriguez, who had been stationed on New Eden with his wife and 2 young daughters. He thought about Dr. Amy Taylor's research team, who had been working on new farming techniques. He thought about the children who would never grow up, the families who would never come home. "Sir," Lisa said softly, "there's more." Jake opened his eyes. "What?" "The Kethve fleet is still there. 12 battleships and twice as many support vessels. They're not hiding. They're not running. They're just waiting. Waiting for what? We think they're waiting to see if we'll respond. Intelligence believes this was a test. They want to see if humanity will fight back or just accept that we're next." Jake stood up and walked to his desk. On it sat a framed photo of his nephew, who had been studying agriculture on New Eden. The boy had wanted to be a farmer to help feed the growing human colonies. Now he was dead, along with everyone else Jake had ever known on that world. "Get me President Turner," Jake said, "and call an emergency meeting of the Colonial Defense Council. Every member. I don't care where they are or what they're doing." Lisa nodded. "Yes, sir." "What should I tell them the meeting is about?" Jake looked out the window again. In the distance, he could see the lights of humanity's orbital shipyards. They had been building new ships for peaceful exploration and trade. Now they would build for war. "Tell them," Jake said quietly, "that humanity is going to send a message." 2 hours later, Jake stood before the largest gathering of human military and political leaders in history. The holographic conference room was filled with faces from every human world. President Matt Turner sat at the head of the table, his face grim. "Ladies and gentlemen," Turner began, "you've all seen the reports from New Eden. We're here to decide how humanity responds to this act of genocide." The room erupted in voices. Some called for immediate military action. Others argued for diplomatic contact with the Kethver. A few suggested that humanity should evacuate the outer colonies and retreat to the safer inner systems. General Tony Walsh slammed his fist on the table. "They killed everyone. Every man, woman, and child on New Eden is dead. We can't just ignore this." "And what exactly do you propose?" asked Senator Nina Santos. "We've never fought a war against aliens before. We don't know their capabilities. We could lose everything." We've already lost everything that mattered, Walsh shot back. Those people were our family, our friends, our children. If we don't respond now, we're telling the galaxy that human lives don't matter. The argument continued for hours. Jake listened to every voice, every opinion. But his mind was already made up. He had seen the reports. He had read the intelligence files. The Kethver weren't just killers. They were a disease that had been spreading across the galaxy for centuries. Finally, President Turner raised his hand for silence. Admiral Morrison, you've been quiet. What are your thoughts? Jake stood up. Slowly, every eye in the room turned to him. The Kethver sent us a message, he said quietly. They burned New Eden to tell us that humanity is weak, that we're just another young species to be exterminated, that we'll roll over and die like the 17 races before us. He paused, looking around the room. I think we should send them a message back. What kind of message? Turner asked. Jake walked to the holographic display and activated the star maps. Red dots marked the locations of human colonies. A yellow dot marked New Eden, now dark and lifeless. A blue dot marked the Kethver fleet's position. We're going to gather every ship we have, Jake said. Every battleship, every cruiser, every destroyer. We're going to build more ships than anyone has ever seen. And then we're going to show the Kethvar what happens when you murder human families. The room was silent for a long moment. Then President Turner spoke. Admiral Morrison, I'm authorizing you to begin immediate mobilization of all human military forces. You have unlimited resources. Build your fleet. Send your message. Jake nodded. Thank you, Mr. President. I promise you this. When we're done, the galaxy will know that humanity protects its own, no matter the cost. As the meeting ended and the holograms faded, Jake stood alone in the conference room. He thought about New Eden, about the families who would never come home. The Kethver had wanted to send a message about humanity's place in the galaxy. They would get their answer, and it would be written in fire and steel across the stars. 6 months later, the asteroid belt around Mars looked like a giant construction site. Thousands of workers moved between the floating shipyards, building vessels that had never been seen before. The sound of welding torches and hammering metal echoed through the vacuum of space. Chief Engineer Pete Rodriguez floated outside, the hull of the largest ship ever built by human hands. The UE's Vengeance stretched for over 2 kilometers, its black armor plating gleaming under the distant sun. Pete had lost his family on New Eden, and now he poured all his grief and rage into building the weapon that would avenge them. How's she looking, Pete? Came a voice through his helmet radio. Pete turned to see Dr. Amy Taylor approaching in her own spacesuit. She had been working non-stop since the mobilization began, developing new weapons based on captured alien technology. She's a monster, Pete replied, running his gloved hand along the ship's hull. 50 main guns, armor 3 meters thick, and engines that can push her faster than anything we've ever built. The Kethver won't know what hit them. Amy nodded, but Pete could see the exhaustion in her eyes through her helmet visor. My team just finished installing the new plasma torpedoes. They're based on Kethver energy signatures we collected from the ruins of New Eden. Their own technology turned against them. Pete smiled grimly. Poetic justice. They floated together in comfortable silence, watching the construction crews work. All around them, other ships were taking shape. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels stretched as far as the eye could see. Every human world had contributed ships, supplies, and personnel. Pete, Amy said quietly, do you think we're doing the right thing? Pete turned to look at her. You mean building the biggest war fleet in human history to hunt down the aliens who murdered our families? When you put it like that, it sounds obvious. But this isn't just about revenge anymore. We're talking about changing the entire balance of power in the galaxy. Pete thought about his wife and daughters. He had seen the last message they sent, a happy video of them picking fruit in New Eden's orchards. The Kethver had turned that beautiful world into glass and ash. Amy, he said, 17 different species are extinct because of the Kethver. 17 entire civilizations wiped out forever. If we don't stop them now, we'll be number 18. Before Amy could respond, their radios crackled to life. All senior staff report to Admiral Morrison's flagship immediately. Priority Alpha. Pete and Amy exchanged glances. Priority Alpha meant only one thing. The fleet was almost ready to move. An hour later, they stood in the massive briefing room aboard the UES Retribution, Admiral Morrison's flagship. The room was packed with ship captains, marine commanders, and senior staff from across the fleet. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker stood at the front of the room, pointing to a holographic display of alien ship designs. Steve had survived 3 separate encounters with Kethver raiders and was now humanity's leading expert on their tactics. The Kethver fight like they're invincible, Steve was saying. They rely on superior technology and firepower to overwhelm their enemies. They don't expect resistance, and they don't adapt well when their plans go wrong. Colonel Nina Santos, commander of the Marine Forces, raised her hand. What about ground combat? If we retake New Eden, we'll need to know how they fight on the surface. Steve switched the display to show armored alien warriors. They're tough, but they're not invincible. Their armor is strong against energy weapons, but our new kinetic rounds can punch through it. The main problem is their size. Most Kethver soldiers are over 2 meters tall and built like tanks. Nina nodded. My Marines are ready. We've been training for 6 months solid. Every man and woman in this fleet wants payback for New Eden. Admiral Morrison stood up from his chair at the back of the room. The entire room fell silent as he walked to the front. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, intelligence reports indicate that the Kethver fleet at New Eden has been reinforced. They now have 18 battleships and over 40 support vessels. War Primary Vethkal himself is commanding the fleet. A murmur ran through the room. Vethkal was a name known throughout the galaxy. He had personally overseen the destruction of 7 different species. Sir, asked Captain Rick Adams, the fleet's intelligence officer, are we dealing with their entire military force? Morrison shook his head. Not even close. This is just one fleet out of many. But it's the fleet that murdered our people, and it's the fleet we're going to destroy. He activated a new display showing the human fleet's current strength. The numbers were staggering. Over 3,000 ships of all sizes, from massive dreadnoughts to small patrol vessels. The largest military force in human history. The Kethver. Think they know us, Morrison continued. They think we're just another young species that will roll over and die when faced with superior force. They're about to learn that they were wrong. Commander Tony Walsh, leader of the fighter squadrons, stood up. Admiral, when do we leave? Morrison looked around the room at the faces of his officers. These men and women had worked without rest. For 6 months, building and training for this moment. They had lost friends and family on New Eden. They were ready for war. We leave in 72 hours, Morrison said. Final preparations begin now. Check your ships, check your crews, check your weapons. When we drop out of hyperspace at New Eden, I want the Kethver to know immediately that they made a terrible mistake. As the meeting broke up, Pete found himself walking beside Amy through the corridors of the flagship. The ship hummed with activity as crew members made final preparations. You know, Amy said, 6 months ago, I was a civilian researcher studying plant genetics. Now I'm developing weapons of mass destruction. Pete nodded. 6 months ago, I was designing peaceful cargo ships. Now I'm building dreadnoughts. The Kethver changed all of us. They stopped at a viewing port and looked out at the massive fleet. Ships stretched in every direction, their running lights creating a constellation of stars in the darkness. Supply vessels moved between them like worker ants, delivering ammunition, fuel, and food. "Pete," Amy said quietly, "what happens after we win?" Pete thought about that. "We make sure this never happens again. We make sure no other species has to watch their families die while the galaxy does nothing." Amy smiled for the first time. In months, a human peace enforced by human ships. "Exactly," Pete said. "The Kethver wanted to send a message about humanity's place in the galaxy. We're going to send one back." In the distance, work lights illuminated the hull of the UE's Vengeance. Soon, she would carry humanity's answer to the stars. Soon, the galaxy would learn that some messages demand a response, and humanity's response would be overwhelming. The stars around New Eden had never seen anything like it. When the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace, their combined mass was so enormous that the light from the system's star was blocked out. Where once there had been empty space, now there was a wall of metal and fury that stretched across the darkness. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UE's Retribution, watching the tactical display as thousands of ships took their positions. The fleet was so large that it took 3 hours just to complete the formation. Battleships formed the center, with cruisers and destroyers spreading out in a protective screen. Fighter squadrons launched from carriers, filling space with deadly, silver specks. "Sir," reported Captain Lisa Bennett from her position at the communications console, "all ships are reporting ready for combat. The fleet is in position." Jake nodded, but his eyes were focused on the enemy contacts on the display. The Kethver fleet hung in orbit around New Eden, like vultures over a corpse. 18 battleships and 42 support vessels. It was a powerful force, but it looked tiny compared to the human armada. "Commander Walsh," Jake said into his headset, "status report on the fighter squadrons." Commander Tony Walsh's voice crackled back through the radio. "All squadrons launched and ready, sir. We've got over 800 fighters in the first wave alone. 800 fighters." Jake remembered when that number would have represented the entire human military. Now it was just the opening move in a battle that would decide the fate of both species. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker from the tactical station, "the Kethver fleet is moving. They're forming a battle line." Jake watched as the alien ships moved into position. They were beautiful in their own way, all smooth, curves and organic shapes. But Jake knew what those ships had done to New Eden. He knew about the children who had died screaming as their world burned. "Open a channel to the Kethver flagship," Jake ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the alien vessel. War Primary Vethkal stood at the center, his massive form covered in ceremonial armor. The alien was over 2 meters tall, with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished stone. His eyes were the color of blood. "I am War Primary Vethkal of the Kethver Dominion," the alien said in perfect English. "You are the humans, yes? You have come to die like the others." Jake stepped forward. "I am Admiral Jake Morrison of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You murdered 2.3 million innocent people on New Eden. We're here to make you pay for that." Vethkal's mouth opened in what might have been laughter. "You speak of payment? We have destroyed 17 species, little human. Your ships are many, but they are weak. Your weapons are primitive. Your people are soft." "Maybe," Jake replied, "but we're here anyway." The alien tilted his head. "Why?" "The dead cannot be brought back. Your world of New Eden is glass and ash. Why do you come to die for nothing?" Jake thought about Pete Rodriguez's family, about Dr. Amy Taylor's research team, about his nephew who had wanted to be a farmer, about all the families who would never come home. Because they were ours, Jake said simply. And nobody kills our people and gets away with it. Vethkal's eyes narrowed. Then you will join them in death. Your fleet is large, but size means nothing against superior technology. We will burn your ships and take your worlds one by one. You're welcome to try, Jake said. End transmission. The screen went black. Jake turned to his crew, all of whom were watching him with expressions of grim determination. All ships, Jake announced over the fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Morrison. The Kethver have refused to surrender. They think we're weak. They think our ships are primitive. They think we'll break and run like the species before us. He paused, looking out at the massive fleet surrounding his flagship. Let's show them how wrong they are. All ships, weapons free. Engage the enemy. The battle began with a wave of plasma torpedoes from the human fleet. Dr. Amy Taylor's new weapons, based on captured Kethver technology, streaked across space like falling stars. The aliens' energy shields, designed to stop conventional weapons, proved useless against their own technology, turned against them. The first Kethver battleship died in a ball of fire that lit up the system. Then the second, then the third. Direct hit on the enemy flagship, reported Steve Parker. Their shields are down. But the Kethver weren't helpless. Their return fire was devastating. Beams of purple energy lanced out from their ships, cutting through human vessels like knives through paper. The battleship U.S. Defiance exploded in a shower of debris. The cruiser U.S. Freedom broke in half, its crew lost in the vacuum of space. Damage report? Jake called out. We've lost 12 ships, Lisa reported, but the enemy has lost 6 of their battleships. They're not expecting this level of resistance. Commander Walsh's voice came through the radio, strained with effort. Admiral, my fighters are engaging their escort vessels. These aliens are tough, but they're not invincible. We're punching through their defenses. Jake watched the tactical display as the battle raged. Human ships swarmed around the larger Kethver vessels like angry wasps. For every human ship that died, 2 alien vessels were destroyed. The humans had numbers, but more importantly, they had something the Kethver had never faced before: pure, focused rage. Sir, Steve called out, the enemy is trying to retreat. The remaining ships are moving toward the hyperspace jump point. Jake smiled grimly. Not today. All ships pursue and destroy. Don't let any of them escape. What followed was less a battle than a slaughter. The Kethvar ships, built for overwhelming weaker enemies, couldn't handle the massive human fleet. One by one, they were hunted down and destroyed. The aliens' superior technology meant nothing against 3,000. Human ships fighting with the fury of the bereaved. War Primary Vethkal's flagship was the last to die. Surrounded by a dozen human battleships, the alien commander tried one last time to communicate. This is not possible, he said, his voice filled with disbelief. We are the Kethver. We are the masters of the galaxy. We do not lose to primitive species. Jake looked at the broken alien on his screen. You made one mistake, Vethkal. You thought killing our families would make us weak. Instead, it made us angry. And angry humans are the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The alien's expression changed. For the first time, Jake saw fear in those blood-red eyes. What are you? Vethkal whispered. We're the species that doesn't give up, Jake replied. We're the species that protects its own. We're the species that remembers it's dead. And we're the species that's going to make sure you never hurt anyone again. The U's vengeance fired its main guns. War Primary Vithkal's flagship disappeared in a flash of light that could be seen from the surface of New Eden. The battle was over. The Kethver fleet was destroyed. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The aliens had other fleets, other worlds, other war primaries who thought they could murder human families without consequence. All ships, Jake announced, prepare for ground operations. We're going to retake New Eden, and then we're going to hunt down every Kethver in the galaxy. The fleet that had obscured the stars began to move toward the dead world below. The message had been sent. The message had been received. Now it was time to deliver the response in person. The surface of New Eden looked like hell. Colonel Nina Santos stood in the dropship's cargo bay, looking down at what had once been the colony's capital city. The buildings were twisted metal and melted glass, their surfaces still glowing with residual heat from the Kethver bombardment 6 months ago. 2 minutes to touch down, called the pilot. Ground forces are reporting scattered resistance. Some of the aliens stayed behind to guard their research facilities. Nina turned to face her Marines. 500 men and women, all volunteers, all carrying weapons designed to kill aliens. They had trained for 6 months for this moment, and now they were finally going to set foot on New Eden's poisoned soil. "Listen up," Nina said, her voice carrying over the noise of the engines. "We know there are Kethver ground forces down there. We know they have weapons that can punch through our armor. But we also know that some of our people might still be alive in their facilities." She paused, looking at the faces of her troops. These weren't professional soldiers from Earth's military academies. These were farmers, engineers, teachers, and shop owners who had signed up to fight after New Eden fell. They were ordinary people who had decided to do something extraordinary. "Our job is simple," Nina continued. "We secure the landing zone. We find any survivors, and we make sure the Kethver never use this world again. Any questions?" Sergeant Mike Taylor raised his hand. "Ma'am, what if we don't find any survivors?" Nina's expression hardened. "Then we make sure their deaths are avenged. Lock and load, Marines. We're going in." A dropship touched down in what had once been New Eden Central Park. Nina was the first one out, her rifle ready as she scanned the devastated landscape. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burned metal. In the distance, she could see the remains of the colony's main hospital, its walls collapsed and its roof gone. "Spread out," she ordered. "Teams Alpha and Beta secure the perimeter. Charlie and Delta with me. We're heading for the research complex." As they moved through the ruined city, Nina's radio crackled to life. It was Dr. Amy Taylor, who had come down with the second wave of troops. "Nina, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the old university district. The Kethver have been using our facilities for something." "What kind of something?" Nina asked, stepping over a piece of debris that had once been someone's home. "Unknown. But it's big, and it's powered by 3 separate fusion reactors. Whatever they're doing, they don't want to be interrupted." Nina felt her anger building. It wasn't enough that the aliens had murdered everyone on New Eden. Now they were using human facilities for their own purposes, treating the colony like their personal laboratory. "All teams, new priority target," she announced. "University District? Grid reference 77 Alpha. We're going to see what our guests have been up to." The university had been New Eden's pride and joy, the finest research facility in the outer colonies, where scientists from across human space had worked on projects to improve life for everyone. Now it was a fortress of alien metal and energy shields, its familiar buildings hidden behind walls of black armor. "Ma'am," whispered Corporal Dave Wilson, pointing to the main entrance. "Movement on the walls." Nina looked through her rifle scope and saw them. Kethver soldiers, their massive forms encased in powered armor, patrolling the perimeter. They were over 2 meters tall and built like tanks, just as the intelligence reports had said. "Sniper. Teams, take position. Nina ordered quietly. Wait for my signal. She watched as her Marines moved into position around the complex. These weren't the same humans who had lived peacefully on New Eden 6 months ago. These were people who had watched their world burn and decided to fight back. All teams report ready, came the voice of Sergeant Lisa Parker through the radio. Took a deep breath. Light them up. The battle for the university began with a coordinated sniper attack. Human marksmen, hidden in the ruins of nearby buildings, opened fire on the Kethver guards. The aliens' armor was strong, but the new kinetic rounds punched through it like paper. But the Kethver weren't helpless. Return fire came immediately, purple energy beams that turned concrete to vapor and metal to slag. The aliens had weapons that could level buildings, and they weren't hesitant to use them. Move, 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 Nina shouted as an energy beam cut. Through the air where her head had been a second before, the Marines advanced through the ruins, using cover and teamwork to overcome the aliens' superior firepower. For every human who fell, 2 Kethver died. The aliens were individually stronger, but they had never faced an enemy that fought with this level of coordination and determination. Breach team, on me. Nina called out as they reached the main entrance. We're going inside. The doors to the university had been replaced with alien metal, but human explosives still worked. The entrance disappeared in a flash of light and smoke, and Nina's Marines poured through the gap. Inside, the university was a nightmare. The familiar hallways had been converted into alien laboratories, filled with equipment that hurt to look. At worst, there were human bodies everywhere, preserved in some kind of alien fluid. My God, whispered Dr. Amy Taylor, who had just arrived with the second wave. They've been experimenting on our people. Nina felt sick. These weren't just random victims. These were people she had known. Professor Jack Davis, who had taught. Her daughter history. Dr. Sarah Kim, who had developed new medicines for the outer colonies. They were all here, all dead, all turned into alien specimens. Nina, Amy said, her voice shaking, some of these preservation units are still active. There might be survivors. Nina looked where Amy was pointing. In the far corner of the laboratory, a dozen preservation units were still glowing with alien energy. Through the transparent walls, she could see human figures floating in the fluid. Medical. Team now, Nina shouted. Get those people out of there. As the medics worked to free the survivors, Nina continued deeper into the complex. She needed to find the main laboratory, the place where the Kethver had been conducting their experiments. She needed to understand what they had been doing to human beings. The central laboratory was a vast chamber filled with alien computers and analysis equipment. At the center of it all sat a single Kethver, its 4 arms moving rapidly over control panels. It was smaller than the soldiers, with longer limbs and a more delicate build. Scientist, Nina said, raising her rifle. Stop what you're doing and step away from the controls. The alien turned to look at her, its red eyes showing no fear. You are too late, human. The work is complete. Your species' biological data has been cataloged and transmitted to the Dominion. When the next fleet arrives, your people will be easier to kill. Nina felt her finger tighten on the trigger. What did you do to them? We studied them. The alien replied calmly. We learned how your bodies work, how your minds function, how your species fights and dies. The specimens were necessary for the research. Specimens, Nina repeated. You mean people, families, children. They were resources, the alien said. Nothing more. Your species is young and weak. You exist only to serve the Dominion's needs. Nina looked around the laboratory at the evidence of alien atrocities. Charts showing human anatomy. Computers filled with data on human psychology. Weapons designed specifically to kill human beings. You made one mistake, she said quietly. What mistake? You assumed we would all die quietly. You assumed we wouldn't. Fight back. You assumed wrong. Nina pulled the trigger. The alien scientist fell backward, its research ending forever. "Ma'am," came a voice through her radio, "we've got survivors. 17 people, all alive." Nina felt a surge of hope. After 6 months of assuming everyone was dead, they had found survivors. Real people who had endured the unimaginable and lived to tell about it. "Get them to the medical ships," she ordered. "Priority 1 evacuation." As the survivors were carried out, Nina looked around the laboratory one last time. The Kethvar had thought they were studying a weak species. They had thought humans were just another race to be catalogued and destroyed, but they had learned something they hadn't expected. They had learned that humans don't give up. They had learned that humans protect their own. They had learned that some species fight back. And now, thanks to their own research, they were going to learn what happened when you made humanity angry. The battle for New Eden's surface was over. The Kethvar ground forces were dead. The survivors were safe. But Nina knew this was just the beginning. The aliens had other worlds, other fleets, other research facilities. And now they knew that humanity was coming for them all. 2 years after the Battle of New Eden, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the U.S. Retribution, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for its final mission. The human armada had grown beyond all imagination. What had started as 3,000 ships was now over 10,000, with vessels from dozens of species who had joined humanity's crusade against the Kethvar Dominion. "Sir," reported Captain Lessa Bennett, approaching with a data tablet. "Final reports from all fleet commanders. Every ship is ready for the jump to the Kethvar homeworld." Jake nodded, but his attention was focused on the alien vessels that now flew alongside human ships. The Zelani had contributed their fast cruisers after the Kethvar destroyed their mining colonies. The Vekmar had sent their heavy battleships after learning what the Dominion had done to their exploration fleets. Even the mysterious Vorthen had emerged from their hidden worlds to join the fight. "How many species are we up to now?" Jake asked. 43 confirmed members of the coalition," Lisa replied, "with more joining every day. The galaxies finally united against the Kethvar." Jake smiled grimly. The aliens had wanted to send a message about humanity's place in the galaxy. They had succeeded, but not in the way they had intended. Instead of showing that humans were weak, they had proven that humans were the species that would stand up to bullies. The species that would fight for others, even when those others were strangers. "Sir?" came a voice from the communication station. "Incoming transmission from the Kethvar homeworld." Jake walked to the main screen as it flickered to life. The image showed the bridge of a massive alien vessel, even larger than the ships. They had faced at New Eden. Standing at the center was a Kethvar unlike any they had seen before. This one was ancient, its stone-like skin covered in ceremonial scars, its forearms ending in claws that looked like they could cut through metal. "I am Supreme War Primary Kethanol," the alien said in a voice like grinding stone. "I speak for the Dominion. You are the humans who destroyed War Primary Vethkol." "I am Admiral Jake Morrison," Jake replied. "And yes, we destroyed your fleet at New Eden, along with every other Kethvar fleet we've encountered in the past 2 years." Kethanol Ezred eyes narrowed. "You have cost the Dominion much, human. 17 worlds lost, 43 fleets destroyed, thousands of our warriors dead. But you have also revealed your true nature. You are not the peaceful species you pretended to be. You are conquerors, just like us." Jake felt anger building in his chest. "We didn't start this war. You did, when you murdered innocent families on New Eden. Everything that's happened since then is your fault." "Perhaps," the alien replied. "But it ends now. This is our homeworld, protected by the greatest fleet in Dominion history. 100 battleships, 300 cruisers, and 1,000 support vessels. You cannot win here. Jake looked at the tactical display showing the Kethvar fleet. It was massive, the largest concentration of alien ships ever assembled. But it was still smaller than the Coalition fleet. You're right about one thing, Jake said. This ends now. But not the way you think. He gestured to Captain Rick Adams, who activated the fleet-wide communications. Suddenly, the screen split into dozens of smaller images, each showing the bridge of a different species flagship. Supreme War Primary Kethanol, Jake continued. I'd like you to meet the Galactic Liberation Coalition. 43 species all, of whom have had enough of your Dominion's murder and conquest. The alien's expression changed as he saw the faces on the screen. Zilani, Vekmar, Vorthan, and dozens of other species that the Kethvar had thought were extinct or broken. Impossible, Kethanol whispered. These species are defeated. They are scattered. They cannot unite against us. They can, said Captain. Zara Veltani of the Zilani fleet, her blue skin marked with the ritual scars of her people. And they have. The Dominion destroyed our colonies, but it could not destroy our will to fight. You killed our explorers, added Commander Thokmar of the Vekmar battleships, his massive form filling the screen. But you only made us stronger. You taught us that some things are worth dying for. Jake watched as Kethanol's confidence began to crack. The alien had spent 1,000 years believing that the Dominion was invincible, that younger species would always bow before superior force. Now he was facing the proof that he was wrong. You have one choice, Jake said. Surrender now, and your people will be treated according to the laws of war. Continue fighting, and we will do to your homeworld what you did to New Eden. Kethanol straightened up, his old arrogance returning. The Dominion does not surrender. We are the masters of this galaxy. We will fight until the last ship is destroyed and the last warrior is dead. Then you've made your choice, Jake said. All ships, prepare for final assault. The screen went dark. Jake turned to his crew, all of whom were looking at him with expressions of grim determination. This is it, he said. The moment we've been building toward for 2 years. The Kethvar Dominion ends today. The battle for the Kethvar homeworld began with a coordinated assault by the entire Coalition fleet. Human plasma torpedoes, Zilani energy lances, Vekmar kinetic cannons, and Vorthan gravity bombs all struck the alien defense fleet simultaneously. The Kethvar fought with the fury of a cornered animal, but they were facing something they had never encountered before. A unified galaxy. Species that had been enemies for centuries now fought side by side against the common threat. Direct hit on their command ship, reported Steve Parker from the tactical station. Supreme War Primary Kethanol's flagship is taking heavy damage. Jake watched the battle unfold on the main screen. The Coalition fleet was taking casualties, but for every ship they lost, 3 Kethvar vessels were destroyed. The aliens' 1,000-year reign of terror was ending in fire and explosions. Sir, called out Commander Tony Walsh from his fighter squadron, enemy reinforcements are arriving from the outer system. Looks like they're throwing everything they have at us. All ships maintain formation, Jake ordered. We expected this. Stick to the plan. The battle raged for 6 hours. The space around the Kethvar homeworld became a graveyard of broken ships and floating debris. But slowly, inevitably, the Coalition fleet pushed through the alien defenses. Admiral, reported Lisa Bennett, enemy fleet is down to 30% strength. They're trying to retreat to the planet's surface. Jake shook his head. Not today. All ships, pursue and destroy. Don't let any of them escape. As the last Kethvar ships died in the vacuum of space, Jake received a final transmission from Supreme War Primary Kethanol. The alien's flagship was burning, its hull cracked and venting atmosphere. "This cannot be," Kethanol said, his voice filled with disbelief. "We are the Dominion. We are the masters of the galaxy. We do not lose." "You're wrong," Jake replied. "You were never the masters of anything. You were just bullies who picked on species that couldn't fight back. But you made one mistake. You hurt our families, and that made us angry. And when humans get angry, we don't stay angry alone. We find friends." Kethanol's eyes filled with something Jake had never seen in a Kethver before: fear. "What will you do to us?" Jake thought about New Eden, about the families who had died there, about the 17 species the Kethvar had destroyed over the centuries. He thought about the choice between justice and revenge. "We're going to give you something you never gave your victims," he said, "a chance to live. Your military is finished, your government is dissolved, but your people can survive. They can learn to be part of the galaxy instead of trying to rule it. You would spare us?" Kethanol asked. "After everything we have done?" "We're not like you," Jake replied. "We don't kill entire species. We protect them, even from themselves." Kethanol's flagship exploded in a ball of fire, taking the last symbol of Dominion power with it. The war was over. The galaxy was free. In the months that followed, the Kethver homeworld was occupied by coalition forces. The aliens' weapons were destroyed, their warships scrapped, their military commanders put on trial for war crimes. But the civilian population was left alone, allowed to rebuild their society without the burden of conquest and murder. New Eden was rebuilt as well, its cities rising from the ashes stronger than before. The colony became a symbol of hope, a place where species from across the galaxy could work together in peace. Jake Morrison retired from the military and became the first director of the Galactic Cooperation Council, overseeing the new alliance that had grown from humanity's quest for justice. The fleet that had once obscured the stars now protected them, ensuring that no species would ever again face extinction alone. The Kethver had wanted to send a message about humanity's place in the galaxy. They had succeeded. The message was clear. Humanity's place was wherever innocent people needed protection, wherever bullies needed to be stopped, wherever hope needed to be restored. The galaxy had learned that humans were not just another young species to be conquered. They were the species that would stand up to tyrants, that would unite enemies into allies, that would fight for justice even when justice seemed impossible. They were the species that remembered their dead and protected their living. And when they sent a message, it was written in fleets that could obscure the stars themselves. The Kethver Dominion was finished. The age of human leadership